Welcome back to the Halftime Report. Disney set to report earnings after the bell today. Mario Gabelli has our call of the day today, and it is on Disney, which you own. And you're very optimistic.
We're fairly substantial shareholders. I think it's one of our largest positions on Fox. Okay, we own Chris Kraft, Rupert bought it, so we have a low cost. We always try to do a tax-free deal for our clients that are taxable. Disney has 1.5 billion shares, pro forma with the sale of Sky, with the sale of the RSNs. They're going to have no more than $40 billion of debt. They're going to have a significant EBITDA with minor capex, and basically, I think they're going to earn $10 looking out a year from now, and 15 multiple to 20 multiple. So that's going to be $150 to $200 stock. And Iger is going to retire at the top of his pinnacle, and Rupert's going to have 120 million of the 1.7 billion shares, assuming everybody else takes cash. The cash is $38 plus Spinco. New Fox is going to be terrific. In addition to that, there's a collar. You're going to get 0.33 shares of Disney for every share if you elect that. And so that's the way it goes.
Disney $150 to $200 stock over the next couple of
2 years. 24 months. That is longer than the time frame, but it allows you to have long-term capital gain. Even at today's outrageous rates, and you're paying 23.8 plus 10% non-deductible tax. That's better than paying 50% if you lived in California.
Does it matter who replaces Iger in your mind? I mean, where does that all factor in?
That's a good question. I think Rupert will have a voice on that because he'll be the largest shareholder, because Larry Fink doesn't think the Vanguard. He's going to have 100 million shares if everybody elects cash. And in addition to that, that's 6%. That's not bupkis. It's, at $120 a share, it's $12 billion. That was a term of trade.
He knows.
So that's he's got an influence. Now, he'll only be 89, so he's not necessarily going to run for office. Basically, he has to have a fingerprint in who's elected in the future.
So I have a question, Mario, on Disney. So one of the problems we're all aware of is ESPN and subs. And it seemed as if there's been a bit of an acceleration in the downtrend in subs recently. You've got the Marvel and Star Wars franchises that perhaps might be running out of steam, or at the very least having a tough time beating Black Panther, for example, and some of the last few years' releases. So where do you see the upside? I mean, where do
Well, I think there's a lot of synergy. First of all, we're dealing with 7.5 billion people in the world. The number of iPhones, or whatever they call those, are growing. There'll be about 5 billion of them in 3 or 4 years. The notion of selling directly to the consumer is happening. That is a secular opportunity that they're going to compete with Netflix on that. They're going to have the content. It's the first time I've seen 2 studios. By the way, the one dynamic we should be aware of is the Chinese have to approve this deal. And they sat on a deal with NXPI, and that's crushed that stock, and it's been a challenge for ARBs. But I think this one here, hopefully for Xi, is a no-brainer. He's got to like Mickey Mouse and approve it. Independent of that, you got all the obvious negatives. That's fine. I mean, if they weren't obvious, then I'd be worried. But don't forget, you got the blue people coming. You got Cameron's 3, Avatar 2, 3, 4 in the pipeline. I can't tell whether they'll make money or not. You've got other franchises. So filmed entertainment, but it's hard to beat what you do. That's a very volatile business.
Mario, I got a quick question for you.
On Disney.
On Disney. Absolutely on Disney. So here's my question for you.
Excuse me real quick.
I own Disney, yes. I've owned it for quite a while, a really long period of time. I sell calls against it every week, or every month, rather. So here's my quick question for you, though. In terms of Disney, I know they're very, very late to the party to compete with the streaming world, right? I mean, that was a mistake, I think, by Iger. However, can they catch up and really actually compete with Netflix, and at what time frame? Is that part of what you're factoring in there in this $160?
No, direct to the consumer, you've got to basically take your product. Even Netflix is going to start showing in the theaters. They'll probably buy an Angelica. No, I shouldn't say that, but I did. Independent of that, basically, you've got to show it at the theater. Then you have some global exposition. But the growth of box office in the United States is only $11 billion. It's been flat, even though you mentioned all those things. But it's 20-odd billion around the world. China only allows X number of movies to come in. I think it's like 34. Imagine when that market opens up. So there's a lot to be happened in content. Then the content, there's no question that Iger wasn't late to the party. Everybody was late to the party with regards to the direct because of structural.
Yeah, but I just felt like Iger, being who he is,
Netflix
and where
is 120 million customers, and they have pricing power. And I'm not knocking Netflix. They should go out and buy Viacom.
How many times did we hear, though, that somebody, whether it be Apple or Disney, somebody should have bought Netflix, right? I mean, we said it on the desk, I don't know how many times years ago, and everybody passed on that whole
This idea, Pete, of, $150 to $200 over 2 years for Disney,
that's not a big
question.
Well, 120.
That's a pretty decent move.
That's a big move.
From 116 with still the overhang of people worried about the kind of things that Kerry talked about, and also the succession. I mean, that's a big deal. It was one of the biggest deals to you, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big deal and still continues to be. Who's going to run
The only
Disney?
succession you have to worry about is
he doesn't care.
Scott,
I love him too.
Who is going to replace you? That's the big question mark in 20 years. Independent of that, Iger has a lot of individuals that are out there.
They were close before.
They can't seem to get one to say yes.
They'll find someone, just like Murph and Burke found Iger, okay? And somebody will find him.
All these CEOs will be replaced by algorithms in 20 years. I wouldn't worry about it.
I will be replaced by a robot.
AI, right?
I'm
building mine now. I'm done.